All righty. So good morning, or as the case is, at least with Stefano, good evening, and thanks for joining. I know we're recording it, but it's nice to have you on board. Today, I'm going to talk a bit about our public REST API and developer roadmap for the foreseeable future. And you may note a new name possibly for y'all on the title slide here, Camilo Dominguez. He was going to join, but he happily is meeting with our CEO and leadership team at this moment, having a bit of a coffee chat with them, and so he'll be joining us later in the presentation, and I'll try to wrangle him to introduce himself at some point there when he joins. Davey, when he does join, could you just give a verbal that he has, and we'll take a pause on the presentation and let him introduce himself. Okay.
Yes, sir. We'll do so.
Thank you. All righty. So let's just dig right in after that. And, as always, we have our roadmap. With roadmaps, we have our forward-looking statement or safe harbor statement. And, honestly, at the end of the day, our plans may change. What we're talking about here may take longer or happen more quickly, but the key message here is to not make any business plans or commitments based solely on this presentation. Rather, wait until what we discuss actually reaches production. So let's talk about the public APIs. Last quarter was a very good quarter. We accomplished a great deal of work. For those who uh, don't know, when you go to the to developer.anthology.com and open the Learn APIs, there's a little box up at the top, and not only do you have the ability to view the current APIs that are in production, but you can also click on that little box and select an upcoming release, and you can actually view the APIs in that context, right? So you can, I think right now we have all the way out to .83 published, right? And basically that is once it's published, such as, we're pretty certain that that's the release that the work will manifest in, the production release thereof. So let's talk about what we did earlier this quarter. Huge ask to around Gradebook to facilitate working with entries, etc. We added dates very specifically to searches. So now you can time box your gradebook searches to help pull the most recent grades. There's another model for doing that involving tracking indexes, etc. We hope that adding the ability to do these searches and pull the grades based on these dates will be easier to use for y'all, but also provide you with a second option. We also, to continue following up on some additional gradebook work that we had accomplished in Q3 calendar year, we now allow you to actually change and edit the Callan formulas, but we very specifically have added formula validation to that. So what will happen is when you add a formula, if for some reason it is inconsistent, doesn't add up correctly, etc., the API result will inform you of that. We delivered on the a copy from identifier in courses. So when you copy a course, we internally have always tracked, well, not always, but most recently we have been tracking what the course was copied from. All right. So you end up with a chain of course copies. So if something goes sideways or some content uh, doesn't make it for whatever, you have a chain and you can work backward to those other courses if they're still on your system. Uh, this is very pertinent to our partner community and folks who actually need to update links, etc. Um, so having this bit of information is quite nice. I think a huge one for folks who have for a long time been wishing for the ability to integrate their your campus calendaring system with the Learn calendaring system. Historically, that's been problematic because it required 3LO. 3LO doesn't work well in a system to system or machine to machine type environment. And so what we did was we revisited the course calendar, and we now enable non-3LO calendar management. You have to apply the correct entitlements, of course, to the integration, but now you can integrate your campus calendar system with Learn. I think there is a very important point there. This only supports course and system level calendars. We do not support personal level calendars. I spoke with a list of folks, and basically we came to the conclusion that you own your calendar and rogue systems should not be inserting items on your calendar. And so if you need to send personal calendar items, it's best to do an ICS file and email that. And you can write your systems that do that, right? And add the code, and the person will get the calendar entry and they'll just add it to their calendar because Learn Calendar supports those. I think that, Davey, if you want to, this is one of the items that we most recently released where we did a full write-up on how to use the calendar APIs. And if you want to share a link to that on Docs, Davey, that'd be awesome. Pop that into the chat.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
On my
Thank you.
way.
All righty. So additionally, in kind of getting back to that, history context and enabling developers to track what's going on with the integrations that they're building, we added LTI context and resource history to our LTI implementation. Pretty much follows the same and enables the same use cases as that copy from identifier that we delivered on courses. A big one with institutional hierarchy, we filled a gap. We realized that we had left out the ability to move child nodes to new parent nodes. You could do it via the UI, but if you're writing integrations with your information systems, wouldn't it be nice to be able to take corrective action with the tooling that you're building? And that's what the ability to move or change the parent node on a child node enables you to do. Course content, we did a bit of work on course content. Most notably, we added the ability to handle the blank page content that was surfaced a while back, and we're very happy to say that we were able to meet that. Near the end of our list, we have added additional secondary IDs and first name, last name searches, right, to our user endpoints. Again, it's really about filling a gap and meeting a developer ask, developer need, and quite happy that we were able to deliver that. And then something very specific to partners, notably proctoring services like ExamSoft. They've been in the news a bit lately. We have added the ability to see assessment passwords, right? The new proctoring standard does not require them, but we know and recognize that we needed to continue to support legacy models, if you will, for delivering and proctoring assessments. So that's pretty much. It was a busy quarter, and really quite happy with what the team and teams actually. We had a team focused on some of the gradebook work, and then the regular API team on the other deliverables. So what's coming up next? Basically, earlier this year, we released a whole bunch of work around rubrics, and we're going to continue to round that work out. Notably, you can read pretty everything that you want to read from a rubrics perspective. So now we're going to move down the path there and enable, creating and updating rubrics evaluations. Those are when you grade following a rubric, you select the rubric cells that are going to be used to calculate the grade. And in some cases, we have folks out there with integrations that actually allow them to select the rubric, but they weren't able to set that rubric when they set the grade. Okay, we could read it, but we couldn't set it. So we're going to deliver on that capability. Additionally, we have rubric associations. What rubric is being used in a course and being used for a column. This meets that need to be able to create that association again, something that you can currently read, but in the coming quarters, you'll be able to actually set those values in the system. And then finally, and it's currently being scoped, so it might fall out of next quarter, just to be upfront, that is the ability to create and update and delete rubrics themselves, right? That pretty much follows the pattern, will enable a programmatic pattern around what you can do currently with the UI, where you can create a rubric, add cells, or add rows, add columns, rename them, etc. And you'll be able to do that via the APIs, essentially mimicking what you can do via the UI. Another body of work will be around announcements, right? The rubrics work is fairly substantial. We're going to try and squeeze in this announcements work. And that primarily is right now, when you get an announcement, you basically can access the announcement and its contents. So the idea here is who created that announcement, right? Which individual, was it a teaching assistant, was it the instructor, et cetera, who created that announcement? Typically system announcements are created by the system admin, but which one? Some of us have many more than one system admin, and it'd be nice to know who created an announcement. So we're going to add created by and the user ID information in the announcements results for both course and systems. And additionally, we're going to add the create and modified date search. Right now, when you do a query on announcements, you kind of get back all of the announcements, right? And then you have to troll through them. And so the idea is, let's make that simpler. Let's reduce the size of the announcements collection when you do a get by allowing you to actually search and filter on availability for those announcements. In theory, you could say, what are the announcements for January, and filter on availability, whether they've been enabled or not, and then programmatically take action. All righty. And let's see. It's always nice to have the short-term peek into the future, but we have, recognize that there's a lot of work to do, right? I have continued to have the create update rubrics on the later slide, right? As I said, it's currently being scoped. We'll see where it lands. How about group attempts, right? The ability to create, update, delete, and generally get information about group attempts. Learning modules, there's a good bit of work to do there. I think, as you all know from the admin roadmap set facing roadmap and learn roadmap sessions, that we are taking a keen interest in learning modules going forward, their structure and how they are used in the system, and the APIs will be developed around learning modules to support that vision. Progress tracking. Okay, so right now, when you are in a course, you can see whether or not you've read something, or whether a student has read something, for example, right? And the idea is that we need to provide APIs that make that particular data point visible to content providers, and to folks who provide reporting tools. Okay, and so we'll have an endpoint that basically says, or probably associated with content, that basically enables access to those, essentially the flags that are in the system that indicate whether a student has read something. And we call those non-participatory items because they're not like a test or an assessment per se, right? It's a document that you posted and you want to track whether it was read, for example, and this is a means of accomplishing that. We have a long-term ask around management of tool availability, okay, via APIs. We're going to start with groups and basically enable through most likely through a set of groups facing endpoints, the ability to manage the tools that are available to the specific groups identified. Then we have the attendance APIs. We want to do a good bit of work around the attendance APIs. There's a wonderful story here about they were actually the attendance APIs, and the attendance service was the first microservice that we wrote, I believe. And we've learned a lot since then, not only about microservices in general, but also the attendant APIs themselves, and even more specifically, the attendance APIs. And so the idea here is, first and foremost, we need to or want to provide timestamp data on the attendance data points, right? When an attendance record was created, was it modified, that sort of timestamp data. And then additionally, there are some inconsistencies between the attendance APIs and our, no pun intended, the rest of our Learn APIs, right? They were, the attendance APIs were created when our API standards were very nascent and new. And so we didn't quite pick up on all of the things that that defined how we really wanted APIs to look and behave. And so the idea is that as part of enhancing the attendance API with timestamp data, we'll also be taking a look at making improvements to the overall attendance APIs, as well as to the microservice service where necessary or possible. We're almost to the end of our short later list, and one of the asks that has surfaced relatively recently was for our gradebook APIs to support exceptions, right? And so that is a body of work that will be coming. This is not in prioritized order. I should have noted that very early on, but the idea is that these are things that are very focused on enabling our not only our next group, but also this later group are significant in enabling the B2 end of life success. And so this is roughly prioritized. The last one on this list is getting logs. That's actually something that's been on the backlog for a while. It's been scoped. And we have a plan for doing it. The work just has not been started yet as a result, as you might guess, because of this desire to enable that B2 end of life plan. And then there's more. Whoops, here we go. There we are. And this is definitely not prioritized and just merely presented in, I am hoping, alphabetical order, providing the ability to work within the activity stream, providing assessment APIs. One of the stories around assessment APIs is we've never had public ones. They've always been private. Some folks discovered them and have been using them, and we want to actually provide a means for them to use them in a supported manner, right? And so the idea is that to provide the APIs that support assessment, create, read, update, delete of the assessment metadata and questions themselves, and also support QTI 3.0. That's a IMS specification that was released maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it's time that we and the standards-based community begin to support it. And so we're going to take a leap here and with the assessment APIs, provide the data, the metadata, in part in JSON format, but also with a QTI 3.0 option. I already called out the attendance API, probably spoke about that way longer than you wanted, but it was fun. We still have batch API requests. That is really a convenience method. To be honest, there's no savings in anything there other than quite possibly some network chatter, right? You still have to handle the individual result sets. You still have to count the requests, etc. Content collection, as you probably are aware, we have released read capabilities for the content collection resources. The idea here is that we shall work on creating, updating, and deleting. We won't tackle the permissions structure, right? That will all be inherited from settings made at the system or UI or course level. But we'll also bring into the mix the ability to upload zip files, right? Course quotas, provide APIs for managing course quotas. Let's improve some searches, notably around terms and data sources. I had already mentioned group attempts. Part of that work will be around attempt grading. The uh, real nice to have, I think, is to have multiple search criteria. So you could chain together your search criteria rather than saying, oh, give me the available ones, and then have to further search or further filter that result set based on, say, the term, right? For a course. The idea is you could say, hey, give me back available courses that are for this term. Okay. That way you can find out, hey, has someone made their course available? OAuth tokens, revoke, enforce, and refresh OAuth tokens to a degree that's handled in 3LO. But let's actually provide those capabilities to your just your standard two-legged OAuth, so that you don't have to wait for a token to expire, for example, to get a new token. System endpoints, improving the or increasing the amount of detail that's available on your system through the system endpoint. We already have a system endpoint that provides the system version, for example. Let's add what your quotas are and your usage is, etc. Already spoke about terms. Ultra status management. That is going to become a big one. And the idea is that to be able to, through an API, uh, set or otherwise change the ultra setting status on a course. We had released a version of that, I'm going to say about 2.5 years ago, and realized that we just weren't ready to go there. We had released it prematurely. It had issues. Since then, we have gone through and improved the original to ultra conversion process, etc. And we think it's time that we'll be able to deliver on this as in the future. And then a little ditty on users there, and that's adding emails to the list of secondary IDs. So let's see where we at now. We'll get to questions as we wrap up the presentation here. So developer portal, a good bit of work is actively being done. It's all large work, right? And so while we have a monthly maintenance window, I do not expect any time in the near future will we have a monthly, will we be taking advantage of that maintenance window? I know we have in a few instances over the past quarter, but given the scope of the work, it's just substantially large enough that I don't think we'll see monthly updates. In any case, last quarter and actually delivered with the yesterday's maintenance window. We made a support improvement, right? And that really is very focused on supporting the developer community in managing accounts and password initiation. So we can create accounts, we can update them, etc., to better serve the community and the support requests that have been coming in. What's next on the docket is, and we talked about this at the last roadmap, and that's the token bucket request limiting. And that really, in a nutshell, is about changing how we track rate limits and how those rate limits impact service or integration deliverables, right? As you may know, historically, if you use up your rate limit, your application stops working. And, that's not good for anyone. And so the primary objective with this new rate limit model is that will not happen in the future. right? You may see a performance degradation, right? Because you'll get back, hey, you don't have any tokens, but we're going to process this request. And then depending on how long that takes, it may take a little bit longer to process the request, right? Um, I have a document that completely outlines this at the moment, that is, we're going to be vetting that over the coming quarter. We're releasing this code into our internal test and development environments, so that we get to hammer on it uh, a lot before it goes to production, and that's largely been the delay in getting it into production. I think when I spoke about this last, I was shooting for December. We're pushing that out. This is, as you would agree, I think, of significant importance that we want to fully understand any and all edge cases that might surface. We also talked about a change audit trail, and that's something that you, as a developer with an account on the portal, would be able to log in, go to a menu option, and basically get a change report, right? Occasionally in the past, someone has come into support and said, hey, my application has moved or my application has changed. What's going on? And now you'll be able to utilize this change audit report to find out when that happened and who done it, okay, and what was done to invoke the change to your integration. And then finally, for next quarter, in-portal API usage reporting right now, and this is not a replacement for utilizing the X header data to track your API consumption, but we're going to improve or enhance the portal UI with a API usage report system. So you'll be able to go in and you'll be able to select applications and say, hey, what's the count of APIs being used by this application? What's the count of APIs being used by my production group? What's the count of APIs being used by a specific site on which my application has been registered? So you'll be able to go in and very quickly and in a very transparent manner see what's going on with your API usage. Again, not a replacement for just-in-time monitoring, right? And adjustments that you would make in your code, but definitely a tool that can help provide reports to your management, for example, or to your development teams. All righty. In the later category, we have quite a few items, right? And I think a lot of them have to do, well, a few of them have to do with being able to improve adoption of our LTI and REST integration model, right? One of these is getting the portal accredited for FedRAMP and IL4. All right. These are security models that are, for example, required by the U.S. government for delivery of tooling in their environments. And also, it's a nice feather to have because then we can talk with folks who are in regions that have stronger security. Sorry, I can't think of the word, that have more stringent security requirements. We can talk with them about the accreditation and where we stand with that and how we are meeting their security requirements. I'm going to jump down the list. And I'm going to say very strongly related to that is regional portal deployment, right? Using a primary, secondary service model, most likely. And that, again, allows us to be able to deploy a version or an instance of the portal in regions where you may have these data sovereignty concerns, for example, and also it most likely and is expected that it will improve performance for your integrations that which do depend on the portal, improve the performance because the portal is in the same region. And for example, if you're in Australia, we're going all the way around the world to tap into what's going on with the portal. And so by having a portal deployed in region, we significantly reduce lag time. All righty. I think during the last roadmap presentation, I talked about improving integration deployment for administrators, for folks who have deployed building blocks, right? When you install a building block, you get back this wonderful page that tells you what the integration does, what system requirements or access it requires, etc. We don't have any of that for LTI or RESTful integrations. And so the idea is let's adopt some of that model and ultimately and eventually require something akin to a integration manifest that informs the administrator of what that tool, what that integration requires and wants to do, but also, and equally important, is right now, in many cases, you actually have to create an additional REST integration or create that REST integration user. By implementing this manifest model, right, we have the information to, on your acceptance and decision to that what that tool wants to do is acceptable. Create that user for you with the appropriate privileges, etc., for the integration to function. From a developer's perspective, we have two models for authorization and authentication, and that is LTI uses JOT tokens and REST uses OAuth. It would be wonderful if I could write an LTI application, include learn REST calls in that application, and not have to register a separate OAuth-based integration with the Learn system. By sharing the same JOT token, it simplifies development and deployment of integrations. I imagine that this would result in a deprecation of at least of the OAuth 2 model, right, for integrations. Already talked about, yes, restricting cross-domain and deployment of non-production applications. This is largely about solving the problem of vendors asking you to register their applications for them, as well as protecting your system from production system from integrations that are in development or that may have not completed testing. A vendor reaches out and says, hey, I've got this beta application. Will you throw it on your production system? We need data to test it, right? Yeah, we don't want you to do that. That's not good for you. That's really not in their best interests either. And for folks who have known me for a long time, one of my mantras is never test on a production system. And this helps us actually through best practices and technology enforce that concept. And I think that is it for the developer portal. Whoops. Which brings me to an announcement that I'm going to share, and that is that I am retiring, and I am going to basically, I've had a wonderful run of 14 years with Anthology. I've loved working with you all and being able to serve and participate in the work that you all do. But it is time for me to rewrite my story and enter the next phase of my life. Whether this is turns into full retirement or merely, as I've been telling my wife, a long work sabbatical. Time will tell. But yeah, there we are. 14 years. The 22nd is my last day. And I wish you all the best going forward. And Camilo is going to be taking the reins. I'm going to uh, come open this back up. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay. Um, Camilo is going to be taking the reins as the lead product manager for APIs, for the REST APIs. He has been my right-hand guy in enabling the development execution of our REST APIs. And he is quite honestly, I think the best person to step in. He has a super strong, knowledge of what we need to do. We've been working together on this for at least 2.5, maybe a bit over 3 years. And so he knows what we're doing. He knows why we're doing it. And he has a super strong client support philosophy. So I think that I definitely think that y'all will continue to be quite pleased with, well, I'm making an assumption that you are quite pleased, but that you will continue to be quite pleased with the work that we'll be doing in the coming years in regard to the REST APIs. And with that called out, Davey, if you want to shut off the recording, we can go vocal and I'll answer any questions.